Inside America's Boardrooms, the informational show for board members and corporate secretaries. Brought to you with knowledge partners NASDAQ, the Center for Audit Quality, and PwC. Along with content contributors Equilar, Meridian Compensation Partners, Wilson Sonsini Goodrich and Rosati, Donnelly Financial Solutions, and the Society for Corporate Governance.
Welcome to this edition of Inside America's Boardrooms. I'm TK Kerstetter, CEO of Boardroom Resources, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the show. Today we're going to be talking about what all directors must remember when overseeing cyber risk. And joining me is somebody that's very familiar with this topic on cyber risk. Welcome Michael Kaiser, who's the Executive Director for the National Cybersecurity Alliance. Welcome, Michael.
Thanks for having me.
So I think maybe a good place for us to start is for you to take a second and describe for our audience what the National Cybersecurity Alliance exactly is.
Yeah, so NCSA is a nonprofit organization. We're a true public-private partnership. We're funded by industry, our board members from industry, as well as the Department of Homeland Security. And we were founded in actually 2001, which I like sometimes to say is BC, before cyber, because it was before most people were thinking about cybersecurity. But there were some visionary people who realized that we had to be doing education awareness. We had to be teaching people how to secure this just exploding arena of digital assets that were beginning to happen at that time. And so we were founded. We've created programs like National Cybersecurity Awareness Month, the Stop Think Connect campaign, and other areas like working with small and medium-sized businesses and businesses of all sizes to make themselves more secure.
Yeah, well, this is not a strange topic to our show. We've had the FBI on.
Sure.
We've had a lot of experts all talking about this, but it certainly is something that is very difficult for boards to get their arms around.
Yeah.
In fact, anybody to get their arms around for that thing. So it's a board's responsibility to oversee risk.
Yeah.
So what do you believe is one of the most important things that directors should remember when they have the responsibility of overseeing the cyber risk?
So a couple of things I think they should think about. One is, I don't think they should be afraid of cyber and think that this is something so brand new and so technical that they don't have a handle on it. Boards have dealt with risks of all kinds within their organizations in the past, have adopted new risks over time, and I think if they're skilled and feel confident in doing that, they should have some confidence about cyber. But that said, obviously the biggest risk is doing nothing at all in this space, which is going to leave you vulnerable. But really taking that more holistic approach to how they address this risk. So they're not just looking at protecting against this threat or that threat or the threat of the day, but looking at the most important digital assets that they have. What would be the worst thing that they could lose, right? And building their cyber protections around that, and then having a holistic approach to that. We're very big supporters of the NIST cybersecurity framework, which has kind of like 5 steps to it, identifying those crown jewels, right? Making sure they're protected and everything else is protected. Being able to understand, we've seen this in a lot of data breaches, detect if something went wrong. That's a big risk. We didn't know it was happening for 6 months, right? And all of a sudden we've been, hacked for a long time. And then I think really important that sometimes gets forgotten is what would we do if something would happen and how would we recover, right? So taking that kind of holistic approach I think can be really helpful.
Yeah, and it's important, there isn't an endless budget. It'd be nice if there was and you could say, okay, I can protect everything, but isn't that one of the reasons that you have to identify sort of an order or what the most important assets are, because you're going to give less emphasis to the bottom of the list and really put the dollars at the top. What can affect your business the most?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right, and that's why not all risks are created equal for all organizations. It partially depends what kind of business you're in, right? Which is what the board understands better than everybody else, right? What business are we in, and what kind of risk does that create for us in cyber? It's going to be different if you're in retail than you're in manufacturing. So you have to look at that risks in the lens that you operate and how your systems operate and what kind of data you have. And it could be that your greatest risk is losing intellectual property, or it could be that it's losing customer data. And that's how you have to put your resources around protecting those most valuable things.
Yeah, and I want to emphasize your last point on being prepared, because we've always said in the show that it's not if you're going to be hacked, but when you're going to be hacked. And so many companies don't even know they've been hacked, but when you do discover that, it's important to have a game plan for sort of crisis planning when that happens. It makes your company and your board look so much more organized versus sort of a fire drill.
Yeah, I think the response and recovery piece is really important. I think the response piece is what would you do in the immediate aftermath of an attack? Like what's our crisis management protocol going to be here, whether it's public relations, technology, moving things to different systems to stay operational. And then how do you make yourself whole again over the long run is the longer term recovery piece, and you have to be looking at both those. And I think, again, back to sort of what boards probably are already good at, if you were running a large corporation in Florida, you're thinking about what would happen if there's a hurricane, how you'd respond and recover. If you're in the Midwest, you're thinking about things like tornadoes. And companies are always thinking about things like a physical, loss, either a fire or other kinds of things that could happen. So this is similar. And so that's what I'm saying, use lessons learned from other spaces to sort of organize how you would respond in cyber. Don't always think of it as something different or new or scary that it's so technical. I think that's one of the risks that you play, is thinking it's too technical.
Yeah. So we have about 2 minutes left, and I know that you're going to be holding an event here, co-hosting with NASDAQ, your cybersecurity summit. And one of the topics that you have on that agenda is minimizing human cyber errors in the workplace. And I was fascinated by sort of that title. So can you share with us what do you believe will be the major points covering that particular topic in the upcoming summit?
Yeah, one of the most vexing things in all of cybersecurity is the human element. We see that in a lot of these hacks, with somebody lost their credentials, somebody's, went to the wrong website. So we're going to have some experts talking about some of those new approaches to training, bringing the workforce up to date, creating a culture of cybersecurity inside a company so that people are paying more attention to it and doing the right things, and looking at some of these difficult issues about behavior change, because that's one of the most difficult elements in cyber, is getting people to go from a bad habit to a good habit. And so we'll have some experts talking about some emerging areas in that space.
Yeah, well, it's fascinating because there's so many devices, so many endpoints today, and you can't not have endpoints. People are developing new endpoints all the time, and it's just such a challenge.
Yeah, and it's not just going to be about the endpoints in the future. So the endpoints is important. That's the perimeter of your organization, but it's going to be about your interdependence. So many of the networks we have and will have require data to come from somewhere else to be used. We saw that in the NHS recently with WannaCry, right? Trying to get data from somewhere else to make something else work. It may be coming from off your company from somewhere else that's providing that data. That interdependence is going to just grow over time, and that's something that people really have to be focused on going forward.
Well, Michael, we wish you luck with the summit. The Alliance is very important, very impressive list of companies that are thinking this through along with your team. So we want to thank you for taking the time and joining us today.
Well, thanks for having us in. We always love to talk about this topic, and we're always ready to help.
Well, that will conclude this edition of Inside America's Boardroom. We hope you enjoyed the show. We'll be back again next week when we take a look at another critical topic that'll help you be a better board member or committee member. So we'll see you then.
Join us again next week for Inside America's Boardrooms. Brought to you with Knowledge Partners, NASDAQ, the Center for Audit Quality, and PwC. Along with content contributors Equilar, Meridian Compensation Partners, Wilson Sonsini Goodrich and Rosati, Donnelly Financial Solutions, and the Society for Corporate Governance.